Lifeguards of Reddit, what's the weirdest thing you've seen someone do in the water? Fake drowning by a woman who admitted that she wanted my attention. I wanted to drown her. 10 comments in and already 2 stories of masturbation. We have these things that spit water up, like a geyser, at random intervals. This one girl, maybe like 5 or 6, was standing over it so it would hit her crotch. Us guards were weirded out, but it wasn't that weird. But then she started moving her suit bottoms and flashing the whole pool her vagina as she was doing it. We all just stared at her and were unsure of what the fuck to do. These 2 kids were having a competition of who could pretend to drown in the most realistic way. A couple having sex in the pool. We kicked them out, but not before he finished in the pool. A lady once had an asthma attack, so we put her on the oxygen only to find out that her oxy-saturation levels were at 100%, turns out she just wanted an oxygen high. A 14-year-old kid floating in the deep end, staring at my female co-worker and masturbating. Cops were called. 2 kids were sucking each other's dick underwater. They'd go down, do the deed, come back up, repeat. Not a lifeguard, but when I was in the water at the beach, I witnessed a guy pulling down his swimming shorts and humping a wave. Lifeguarding was my first job when I was 16. I watched a little girl around 9 to 10 years of age dive headfirst, with a life jacket on, into a kiddie pool of about 6 inches. Needless to say, she smoked her dome and I had to patch up a little cut on her forehead. Not really that weird, but once watched a teenager Naruto run through the lazy river for my entire 15-minute rotation. Had a kid at the lake take a bite out of a dead fish because his friend told him to. Couple having sex in the water, not as fun as you would think. There's lots of kids around. We'd yell that this is a family facility, not a family making facility, and they'd always stop. A big 250 pounds man who didn't know how to swim jumped in the 12 feet because his 8-year-old son was gonna teach him how to swim, and another lifeguard got in to rescue him, but he panicked and pulled her under, so I had to get in and save them both. One guy hopped in the pool and just walked along the bottom with his nose just out of the water the whole time. I never once saw him come up to breathe with his mouth, just his nose. It was hard to watch the rest of the pool because I thought I'd have to jump in to get him, but eventually he got out and left. I once saw a guy do 2 whole lengths underwater, 25 meters pool. Like, what the fuck? I'm not a lifeguard, but when my sisters and I were at a pool, there was a little kid about 5 years old that had goggles and snorkel, and was hovering near people's butts. Not necessarily girls' butts, but pretty much anyone. It made a lot of people super uncomfortable, and I had to tell the lifeguard. The mother ended up scolding him for it but did nothing to stop him. He would keep doing it but tried being sneaky. It makes me sad to say this, but I saw an older man jerking off underwater in a public pool with a bunch of kids in it. He tried to hide it, but I could see where his hand was underwater and how his arm was jerking up and down. His face was also strained. I used to be a lifeguard, until some blue kid got me fired. I have literally seen a woman in her late 70s take off her bathing suit bottoms and proceed to fuck herself with the water jet in the hot tub. No amount of bromine fixed that fucking tuna water smell. It still haunts me. Not a lifeguard, but some outsiders came to swim in our society pool, directly below my window. A small boy pooped in the pool. The mom took off his pants and washed his butt and pant in the pool while the family is still in the pool. When I told them from above not to do that, 2 men 30 to 40 came out of the pool, and started peeing in the pool while looking at me. Fun part, nothing was done about it because the security guy wasn't around that time. No CCTVs too. It was in India. We had jets of water that came up from the bottom of the pool. A girl masturbated by parking herself over it. Sat there for at least 10 minutes. Edit, I forgot to mention I think she was like 10 years old. My slim cousin dived underwater and opened my legs and passed through them. On the hottest day of the year when we were short on guards, we paid a guy $5 to shit in the pool so we could clear it for an hour to clean. I had a lady try to bring a fully loaded plate of picnic food into the swimming pool. She seemed genuinely surprised when we told her she couldn't eat it in the pool. Not a lifeguard, but my brother is. A teenage/early 20s girl peed in the pool, but I guess she forgot that she was taking UTI meds that turn your pee bright orange, so literally everyone saw what she was doing and there was a mass exodus out of the water. I once had a lady who had a snorkel on. She then proceeded to dunk the snorkel under the water every single time she took a stroke. I got a call about a disabled jet ski, drove down to check it out and there was a ski about a quarter mile out, just sitting there. Brought out my binoculars to see what was going on. Dude had his girl bent over the steering column of the jet ski, just giving her the business. They came in to try and beach the jet ski and I had to stop them as launching and beaching jet skis is prohibited on my beach. I took the time to explain that people called about them and that quite a few had taken out binoculars. He looked pissed, she was mortified. Another time there was a guy wearing a red Speedo walking down the beach alone. I noticed something at the dune line and there was a group of 10 or so guys wearing blue Speedos sneaking behind the dune. One gave the signal and all 10 rushed the guy in the red Speedo. They pushed him down, started kicking him, then picked him up and threw him in the ocean and they all ran away. Not that weird, but I lifeguarded at my college rec center pool, and there was a guy who would come swim 4 or 5 days a week and would constantly mutter motivational things to himself between sets, sometimes almost aggressively. He'd say things like, "You better make this set in under X amount of seconds or you can do better than that, what is wrong with you?" I think he thought he was talking under his breath, but sound carries over water really well and any that he swam I could usually catch what he was saying from on stand. Not a lifeguard, but when I was little I was swimming at a local pool. There were these high school guys who were swimming nearby, when all of a sudden one of them started yelling for help and saying he couldn't swim. I was holding onto a foam float so I handed it to him, and he said something like, "What are you doing, kid?" Anyways, the lifeguard swam in and saved him. Now that I think about it, years later, I'm sure he was perfectly fine and just liked her. There was this dude at the indoor pool I worked at who flashed his dick and was polishing his knob in the occupied hot tub. We told the facility staff to keep an eye on him. He was there for 5 hours and at the end of the night he was caught peeking into the ladies' locker room. They sat him down in the office while they waited for the police. He made a run for it and a staff member dislocated his knee in pursuit while his comrade made the tackle. He got arrested and we all had to write police reports. Turn out his brother was also a sex offender for coming on a girl the morning after a one-night stand. They both live together in a storage facility since they can't live near children. I once watched as another guard jumped in then performed a front active rescue. As she pulled the victim up he threw up all over her, leading her to throw up all over him. And then back and forth, causing both of them to start drowning. Then I jumped in from the other side, did a rear-active rescue on my own co-worker as another guard saved the original victim. Awkward day. I was a lifeguard at a camp, and this Pentecostal church came to stay, about 500 of them. Even in the pool, the boys would wear slacks and a belt. No shirt, but they'd be wearing their tan slacks and brown belt. Blew my mind. We once had a family who did not speak English very well and came in for open swim. However, no one in the family had the proper swim apparel and just stripped to their underwear. The mother and kids still proceeded to swim in the shallow end, and grabbed the ring buoy used for rescues, as a float for the youngest child. Then the father jumped into the deep end, and immediately started to drown, and obviously had no swimming experience, so my co-worker had to make the save. Safe to say this was one of the more interesting days working at an indoor pool. My buddy and I both lifeguarded for 2 summers. Our first week on the job, a little boy about 5 years old runs over to my buddy with a phone and shows him the screen. My buddy started laughing uncontrollably and double whistled to get a manager. Right after, the kid's dad runs over and throws the phone into the deep end of the pool, which I was watching. The manager came out to our stands and asked what happened. My friend explained that the kid had a porn site on the phone and told him he had just stolen his dad's phone. Turns out the dad has been known for watching porn at the pool in past years, and this time managed to get snitched on by his kid. I retrieved the phone from the deep end and it was completely fried. Because of the dad's previous actions and being that we worked at a family-friendly public pool, he was asked to leave and never come back. We once had a man come into our pool for lane swim. He had all the latest gear, brand new suit, cap and goggles. He got to the edge of the deck and did some arm circles, adjusted his goggles and dove into the pool. He popped up for a few seconds, then promptly started flailing and gasping for breath. A colleague jumped in and pulled him out immediately. We were all really confused until he told us he had never swam before and he thought it came naturally. I worked 3 years as a lifeguard for my local community center. Our place was somewhat unique as we both had an indoor pool and water park, complete with water slide and other such things. There were also containers filled with pool toys and other things like life preservers, life vests, and kickboards. One day, while I was on break, my supervisor comes running into the break room and tells all of us, there were 3 of us on break, to come help control a situation in the water park area. Apparently, one of the summer camp's kids had rallied enough kids together and coordinated them into constructing makeshift rafts with all the pool equipment. By the time we made it out on deck, they had already made a motley fleet of boats pieced together with pool noodles, life jackets, and other floating toys. The issue, however, was not that they had MacGyvered this little fleet, but how the camp had split into factions and begun an all-out naval engagement in the pool. Pool noodles were now being used as makeshift water cannons, and things only escalated from there. Some of the kids had broken into our supply closet and found our stash of other water toys, super soakers, water balloons, etc., and came whooping out onto the deck. A few of the kids made armor out of the kickboards and vests and were wielding the buoys we use for water aerobics like clubs. Others had taken the water balloons to the top of the water slide and were lobbing them off in some crude bid for air superiority. This one girl had taken her camp shirt and tied it to a pool skimmer, waving it like a flag and yelling for the king. For the king. It took 30 minutes to regain control of the situation, in which time one of the guards required stitches due to being pistol whipped with a water gun by an overzealous 11-year-old. We never did invite that camp back. Not really in the water technically, but still a head scratcher. Used to work at a very high-end gym back in college. You could pay annually $1,000 or monthly to the tune of about $120. Had a regular who would come in late afternoons every Saturday and Sunday to our outdoor pool. This lady was absolutely stunning. Maybe early 30s and the physique of a supermodel. Always wore a super tight purple bikini and lounged out on the stone wall encompassing the hot tub. Never actually in the hot tub, but would lie on her back along the wall. Made it really hard as a 20-year-old male lifeguard to concentrate on the people in the water. Thank God for sunglasses. It was also hard to remain focused on the other patrons, as this lady would proceed to then one by one pick the leaves off the shrub next to the wall, eat them, and hold a conversation with herself while staring into the sky. As the leaves would start to dwindle on that particular shrub over the course of the week, she'd move farther along down the wall and start on the next one. This continued every summer for about 2 years until I left for the military. Wherever you are, lady, I hope you're doing well outside of your career calling as a deer or rabbit. There was also the man who got pissed when we closed the water slide for the night, so he went over to the children's wading section, took a big dump, and ran, fleeing out the side gates. Joke's on you, buddy, we got to shut down for the day and got paid to fuck around on my phone in the guard office. I was a lifeguard at the base pools when I was on active duty in the Marines. It's a very unambiguous fact that the black guys just weren't good swimmers for the most part, and this was made evident in boot camp during swim qualifications. As such, a black, or dark green, Marine that could swim was rightfully proud of his abilities. Except, there were a few guys that thought they could fake it and still pass themselves off as being buoyant. It escalated, and one of a group of guys climbed the high dive with the very vocal intent of doing a flip into the deep end. He managed most of a full revolution, and landed in a perfect, 90-degree, legs straight out seated position, breaking the surface with his ass. It made a painful sounding car whop sound when he impacted, and I stood up on my elevated stand after seeing and hearing him hit. After a few seconds, the top of his head slowly broke into the clear, and as soon as his mouth and nose were exposed, he made a horrific, long and painful gasping sound that resembled an inhaled grunt. I immediately dove in, surfaced up next to him while lifting him up a little by his torso, and told him to relax, that I had him. Just breathe, and take your time doing it, catch your breath. By this time 11 other jarheads were at the side of the pool. Because of fraternal concern, everyone either saw or heard this happen, and they lifted him out, setting him down gently on the side of the pool. I saw the jumper a few times over the next few months in the chow hall. We just gave each other silent nods in passing, never speaking, tacitly acknowledging each other.